You talk about this question, this fascinating question: what does it take for a country to prosper?
Mhm.
What does it take for a country to prosper? You see many countries in the world that really struggle
Mhm.
and many that flourish.
Mhm.
And it's not always obvious why,
Mhm.
because some have natural resources, some don't.
Mhm.
Some have wars, some don't. Some have uh, sort of authoritarian regimes, some don't, and some have democracies and all that kind of stuff. So the dynamics aren't exactly obvious. Is there commonalities? Is there fundamental ideas that result in a prosperity of a nation?
Today, I can confidently say yes, despite all the differences that you talked about. And I think then this is where it becomes very important that we are very clear about the question you asked me. You said, what does it take to make a country prosperous? So I'm just going to stick to prosperity, because prosperity doesn't necessarily mean, sometimes doesn't has nothing to do with maybe how you conduct yourself otherwise, socially speaking, right? So you can be prosperous and still, when it comes to your family laws, all the way you approach the other aspects of your life, maybe you're running a very communist lifestyle,
Mm-hmm.
or you're in a very liberal, society.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, when we talk about prosperity, I just want to make sure that we're clear on that, because some people might say that, might be somewhere and be like, well, because I know what I'm going to talk to you about next. And some people are going to sit there and be like, well, China is not like that. Or,
Yeah.
even Dubai is not like that. No. So what I'm talking about is this thing. And that's what I love about this. If we just stick to the word prosperity,
Mm-hmm.
to me, I see prosperity as this. It's like, economically speaking, what are we going to be a prosperous nation? Meaning we are a middle to high income nation. I'm not talking about what are the rights of your women to vote, or can people live like this, or I'm not
Yeah.
talking about any of that stuff.
Fundamentally economic
Yes.
prosperity.
Because I think it's that distinction is very important, because over the years I've seen people push back on all types of things, and it occurred to me that that's what the misunderstanding was there. So if we're going to talk about prosperity, making sure that the country can make money so that it can take care of its needs and the needs of its citizens, then what I have come to find is that at the root of that is going to be what we call economic freedom, and what I call the toolkit of the entrepreneur. In that, you can put the rule of law, you can put the concept of clear and transferable property rights. Economic freedom is at all the levels, that which will allow entrepreneurs and business people to create value, and create value entrepreneurially. We're not talking about rent seeking or anything like that. It's like you found a pie to be this big and you make it this big. So that's what we're talking about.
Create value.
Create value. Yes. So when it comes to that, we have found that whether you're looking at two countries that start out the same, we're talking the same people: East Germany, West Germany, South Korea, North Korea. Very similar people to start with, right? But yet, radical outcomes. I know that today Germany is united, but we're talking about back in the days when you had East and Western Bloc. Same people, very different outcomes. Like I said, South Korea, North Korea, and so on and so forth. And at the same time, very different nations. Dubai compared to Singapore or to England, very different, yet the same outcome. So it seems to me like whenever we're looking at prosperity, if a nation is prosperous, regardless of whatever other shenanigan they might be running, whatever other operating software they might be running for anything that's not related to business, if on the business side they are proponents of a free markets, or at least a base level of free markets, we know that such countries will create prosperity.
So, what are the aspects of the operating systems that lead to Singapore and to a South Korea and all that kind of stuff? So, can you speak to different
Sure,
elements that enable the toolkit for entrepreneurs?
sure. And maybe here let me just maybe illustrate it with my own story, and then I can take you back to.
What's Magatte, tell us your story.
No,
Who are you?
It's just because it started with me coming here. You showed me the robot and everything, and now it looks like we've known each other for 12. And then you're like, tell people. And then, no. But so this is where this question, even when you ask me, how do some countries become prosperous? That question, Lex, I had it when I was 7 or so. That's when my family moved me to from Senegal. For the first time of my life, I left my country, I left my continent, and I was headed to Europe to go join my people, my family, my parents, who were there as economic migrants. My parents had migrated for a better life, as so many people have to. So many people have to, coming from poorer places, coming from low-income countries.
So you saw the difference?
Yes!
Between the two places?
How else would you call it? Here you are in Senegal, minding your own business, causing tons of trouble everywhere. Just being a happy, free ranch kid that I was.
Yeah. So you were always a troublemaker, not just now.
Always.
Okay. Great.
Life wouldn't be fun without it.
Yeah, and of course, I agree.
Right? So, because even you're all put together, front. I know there's a lot of troublemaking behind you.
Desperately trying to keep it together.
I know you are, but with me, I'm going to totally bring it out. So
Good.
So
you saw the difference.
Right. I saw the difference. I'm walking in here back home, and I tell people this story because to me, it's a defining story. Back home, to take a shower, it takes time. Grandma has to, make the charcoal catch on a little stove like you use at, when you go camping. And then she puts a pot of water on it. It boils. She takes it, puts it in a bigger bucket, mixes it with some colder water. Then we put a little pot in it, and a stronger member of the family has to drag it to the shower. And then there, finally, I can proceed to take my shower. Mm-hmm. Here I'm in Germany in the middle of the winter, and my mom's like, "Magatte, time for your shower." I'm like, I'm not getting naked. Where's the bottle? This cold weather? Where's the bucket of hot water? She's like, "Oh, you silly! Come on, just jump in." And I jump in the shower, turn the buttons, the water is coming down temperature while I'm playing. It's like, are you kidding me?
It's so amazing.
I've been cheated out of life my whole life.
Yeah.
So that's what happened. Yeah. And then I'm like, oh, and all of these roads, they're paved roads. Unlike back home, everything is sandy, and my feet are always ashy. I always have to wash off when I go back home, and your shoes get ruined most of the time. And it started, and I had this question, and it was just like, wow, how come they have this and we don't? So I was not being like, oh, how come they have all of this money? Oh, I was not that. It was just like, how come? And I think what I was alluding to was, how come life is so easy here? And back home, it's not.
And easy, not in a negative sense,
no.
In a beautiful sense. Sometimes I get, just having traveled through the war zone, just to come back, traveling through Europe, back to America, I'll just get emotional just looking at the efficiency of things, like right. how easy it is, how that we can. First of all, in Ukraine, you currently can't fly, right? It's a war zone. Just even the thing, transportation. You said roads. Yeah, the quality of roads in the United States is amazing. Just not, many of the places I had to drive in Ukraine. You're talking about, really bad conditions of roads. And I'm sure in many parts of Africa and many parts of the world, the roads are even worse.
Right.
And outdoor, having a indoor toilet is a fascinatingly awesome luxury to have.
Mm-hmm. It is. And don't take me wrong, Lex. Do we have some great roads now in many parts of Africa?
Yes.
Main arteries, great roads. You're like, whoa, this is moving. Yes, we do. But definitely more today than in my time growing up. Do we have, a country like Nigeria that just birthed 6 unicorns last year alone? Yes. Do we have the African youth out there being so amazing and, living their lives? Yes, we have all of that. But it is still, unfortunately, just like we're scratching the surface.
Yeah.
And those people still are getting all of that accomplished, literally swimming through molasses. Mm-hmm. This is some of the most gross, immoral, unfair waste of human capital.
And so that is the started with you as a 7-year-old asking, wait a minute, how do amazing people in Europe do this and the amazing people in Africa don't?
Yeah. And that's a key word, amazing, because that's what I realized later, because it was not always like that for me, amazing, right? I knew instinctively that of course we are amazing too. But so eventually the question became so I went from how come they have this and we don't, to the country as I'm growing up and researching, because it stayed with me. When I tell you I'm obsessed, I'm haunted. I am haunted. So you can laugh all you want, but it's so the question became how come some countries like the United States, Singapore are rich, and some others like mine and many others in Africa are poor? That became the question. And along the line, Lex, along the road, I continued on living my life, wondering about this question. And I've heard all types of reasons as to supposedly why that might be the case. Some people with a very straight face are still peddling the IQ theory, according to which, come on, darling, it's not your fault. You know, your skin color goes with a gene sequence that just doesn't allow you to be as smart as white people are. And it's not your fault, but just accept it. That stuff is still out there. It's very real. And I have to hear it. And others would say to me, oh, it's just because, you know, you guys don't have an adequate level of education. And I say, you know, maybe you got to go say that to most of the street sellers you go see in Senegal. You go up to many of these street sellers in Senegal. They are wading through cars, in moving cars, under the hot sun, fumes thrown at their face, trying to sell you anything and that you think you might be able to use. Whether we're talking about an ironing board, to an umbrella, to Q-tips, to toothpicks, selling you whatever you need from your car. These are street sellers, and you ask them, dear, do you have any degree? Yeah, I have this graduate degree in math or in literature or whatever. Some very, very educated people. Yet they're right there. This is what they're doing.
So that's just at scale wasted human potential.
Thank you.
So that has to do, the wasted human potential has to do now with the system, with something about the laws, something about sort of the things that limit or enable the entrepreneur.
Yes. Because at that point, I've heard this. You know, I heard people say, yeah, your IQ is no good. Yeah, you don't have enough degrees, or you're not educated. Yeah, some people would even say, it's because you guys are malnourished. You're malnourished. You need to be fed. Others, oh, well, maybe I'll give you some shoes and maybe something is going to change, whatever. And then, so I heard all of this nonsense, Lex. But guess what? None of it made sense. Do you know why it didn't make sense? Because if any of that crap was true, why, oh, why is it that my parents or any other people from these places, and oh, and by the way, some people call those places God-forsaken land. That's also the type of criteria you always have to hear, when it's not just flat out SHIT, whole countries from, one person a few years ago, president of his country.
That sentiment is sometimes there. Is what you're saying.
It is. As I go on with my life, trying to find the answer to why are some countries like mine poor while others are rich, I'm hearing all of these reasons thrown at me. And then they make no sense. Because then how come then, if my parents move, as it is usually anyone else who moves from a poorer nation to a nation that supposedly is rich, all of a sudden, they get to manifest the greatest potential. So I'm starting to think this has nothing to do with a person per se, because we're talking about the same person, same background, same everything, same name, features, everything.
Yeah.
Now I'm starting to think maybe it doesn't have to do with the person. Maybe we're talking about something that has to do with the place that they came from or the place that they're going to. So this little thing is starting to be in my mind. Again, remember, this is not something that I woke up to overnight. I'm like, voila, I got my quiet. It took me for a long time, and I had to face off, to have many different ideologies face each other. I had to really have a reckoning, literally in my heart and in my mind. And so then that's what I'm thinking. It cannot be. It cannot. No, no, no. It's the same people. It has to be about the place. But then what about this place? But then even about the place, you're thinking, again, two countries, different background, same outcome, same background, different outcome. What is this? And then I go on. I start I am in Silicon Valley in the late 90s, early 2000s, dot-com boom, all of that. And I'm starting to discover this concept of this thing called entrepreneurship. I'm in Silicon Valley and just getting to experience what seems so cliche by now. But, people getting together on the back of a napkin, talking about an idea, putting it out. And then they go out and they talk to some investors who's going to invest in it. Then they have the lawyers who get to, put all of this stuff together. And then they have the big four CPA firms, this whole ecosystem of what they call of entrepreneurship. And then eventually this concept of entrepreneurship being this idea of, creating something out of nothing. So there I am. And at some point I become an entrepreneur myself. And the way I became an entrepreneur was not like I woke up and I'm like, I want to make money, so I'm going to become an entrepreneur, no. And this is also another problem I have with people who have a problem with entrepreneurs or business people. Most entrepreneurs do not start a business to become rich. Most entrepreneurs start a business because they have identified a problem that bothered them enough that they said, enough is enough. I'm going to do something about it. What entrepreneurs are people who criticize by creating. Do they always get it right? No. As a matter of fact, the failure in entrepreneurship is humongous. It's kamikaze path to take the entrepreneurship path. We lose our spouses. My first husband passed away as soon as I was about to sign my first term sheet. And yet, I had to keep going. What force can keep you going after you just lost the love of your life? What force keeps you going? The force of, I just want to be rich? Really? When your whole world is upside down? Your whole world is upside down and you just want to quit? You just want to go meet him and join him in death? I stayed. Why? Because of the same reason why I started my company. I stayed because the women whom I had put back to work by then, we're talking about some of the most vulnerable women in my country. These are women who grow the hibiscus, which we need to make the bissap, which is the juice of teranga. Remember? This is our national identity drink. And for the longest time, women grow this hibiscus that we use for the national drink, this drink. And now that Coca-Cola, Pepsi, and all that had made it through the marketing that it is more cool to drink those beverages, now there is no more market for the hibiscus. And with that goes the livelihoods of these women. And for me, that bothered me enough. Because in that force, I saw two things. One was a part of my culture. We're talking about, part of my cultural identity, for Christ's sake. The juice of teranga. You asked me, what defines you? I said teranga. There's a juice for it. So my culture is disappearing. And at the same time, these women are sliding into abject poverty because what they used to make, no one needs anymore. Yeah. So that is what got me to start a company. And the company was created just because of that. I wanted to build a company that would allow me to not only preserve this very important aspect of my cultural identity, and at the same time, put these women back to work.
And maybe it's more difficult to put into words, but there's it's a basic human spirit where you see the place where you came from breaking apart in some kind of way, and you have the entrepreneurial fire that dreams of helping.
Yes.
And that sometimes it's hard to convert that into words. You have to tell nice stories and so on, but it's the basic human desire to help.
Yes.
And
especially
like said, when criticized by creating.
Especially when you've been phrase. Especially when, and let's face it, are we all a bundle of circumstances, some happy, some worse? Yes, we are. And oftentimes I ask myself, Magatte, why you? Why did you get to have the opportunities that you have? What makes you different from, let's say, even your cousin that is still home, trapped? Because we call ourselves trapped citizens. When you're trapped in these countries that go nowhere, we're like a bunch of trapped citizens. So you see, Lex, when my husband passed away, and I wanted nothing more to do than to quit and to send, investors had already said, we understand if you want to stop. Whatever you decide to do, we'll do that. And I wanted to quit. And I was actually on my way. I was in Senegal for a month, trying to really get a bearing over myself. And by the end of the month, I had decided I'm letting go. There's no way. The pain was too great. Nothing made sense anymore. It was too much. So I went to see this woman, and I talked to the one who, we're talking back then, there were 400 of them. Later on, we grew to 9,000. And I told the representative of all of them, and I told her, this very old lady, and just looking at her, I knew I was going through some pain, but this woman has probably gone through 10 times. Not that pain is like measurable, but you could tell this woman probably lost a child, as oftentimes happen in places, that are lower income countries. Probably lost a husband also. Probably, who knows, so many people. Loss is part of our lives.
You could see the pain.
You can see the pain. Yet she's so dignified. She's so dignified. And that already kind of made me like, my God, stop crying. And I told her that I was quitting. I could not look her in the eyes. And she said, look at me. I could not look her in the eyes. She said, look at me, child. And I looked at her, and she said, I know you're in pain, but where your husband is, where your beloved is, there's absolutely nothing that you can do for him. But for us, you can change everything. And I went back. So that's what entrepreneurs are at their best.
So she helped you find your strength?
Yes. And I was weak still, but I said, you put that aside. There's a job to do here. And I went back. And Lex, I fought with everything that I had. And this company that I started in my kitchen became this company that had the who's who of the beverage world. With, at some point, Roger Enrico, the chairman of PepsiCo, sitting on my board. Yeah, I went back because of that. So the reason why I tell this story for me is important, because the world needs to understand that there's a viable way of caring and of being part of a solution for the lesser fortunate, in terms of not keeping them where they are and we're like the saviors coming and, giving them food and all that. No. But it's like, just like the leg up I got in my life, give somebody else a leg up.